Black CEO's daughter went undercover as an intern in dad's company, then fired every corrupt manager on the spot. There is a popular saying that power corrupts absolutely, and absolute power corrupts even the most trusted allies. This is the story of how one brilliant young woman exposed the dark underbelly of corporate America by sacrificing everything she had, her identity, her privilege, and her safety, to save her father's empire from the inside. Meet Amelia Johnson. 20 years old, brilliant beyond her years, and the daughter of one of America's most successful black entrepreneurs. Her father, Daniel Johnson, didn't inherit his billions, he earned them. Starting with nothing but a dream and a beat-up laptop in his mother's basement, Daniel built Johnson Industries from the ground up. Today, his company employs over 50,000 people and generates billions in revenue annually. But success this massive comes with a price, and Daniel was about to learn that the people he trusted most were bleeding his company dry. Amelia had always been curious about her father's world. While other billionaire kids were partying in Monaco or buying their way into elite universities, she was studying business analytics at Harvard, graduating summa cum laude at just 19. But academic excellence wasn't enough for her. She wanted to understand the real mechanics of corporate power, not from the boardroom, but from the ground floor where the actual work happened. The idea came to her during a family dinner when her father mentioned some concerning quarterly reports. Revenue was down, employee satisfaction surveys were abysmal, and several key clients had mysteriously switched to competitors. Daniel looked exhausted, the weight of uncertainty etched across his face. That's when Amelia made a decision that would change everything. Instead of walking into Johnson Industries as the CEO's daughter, with the red carpet treatment, corner office, and immediate respect that came with the last name, Amelia chose a different path. She would go undercover as a regular intern, using only her first name, with no connections, no special treatment, and no safety net. She wanted to see the company through the eyes of someone who had to earn every ounce of respect, someone who was truly expendable. The transformation was meticulous. She traded her designer clothes for thrift store finds, moved into a modest apartment across town, and created an entirely new identity. On paper, she was just Amelia, a recent college graduate looking for her first break in the corporate world. She applied through the standard intern program, went through multiple rounds of interviews, and was eventually accepted as an unpaid intern in the marketing division. Her first day at Johnson Industries was a shock to the system. Walking through the gleaming lobby that she'd visited countless times as a child, Amelia was now invisible. Security guards who once smiled and waved at Little Miss Johnson now barely acknowledged her existence. The elevator that used to take her directly to the executive floor now stopped at the third floor, where a maze of cramped cubicles housed the company's junior employees. But what truly opened her eyes was witnessing the stark divide between how employees were treated based on their perceived value to the company. The managers, people her father trusted implicitly, ruled their departments like feudal lords. They demanded absolute loyalty while showing none in return. They preached company values during meetings but abandoned them the moment it served their interests. Miles Webb, the marketing director, was particularly cruel. A man in his 40s who'd been with the company for over a decade, he treated interns like personal servants. On Amelia's second day, he threw a stack of papers at her feet and sneered, "Real employees shouldn't have to clean up after themselves. That's what interns are for." When she bent to pick up the papers, she heard him whisper to another manager, "These kids today think they deserve respect just for showing up. Wait until the real world hits them." Sarah Chin, the HR director, was equally problematic but in a more insidious way. She smiled while she stabbed employees in the back, documenting minor infractions to build cases for termination while ignoring serious issues reported by staff. Amelia watched Sarah dismiss multiple sexual harassment complaints with phrases like, "Boys will be boys," and "Maybe you're being too sensitive." Then there was Robert Kane, the finance director, who controlled departmental budgets with an iron fist. He routinely denied requests for essential resources while somehow managing to approve expensive, team-building retreats to luxury resorts, retreats that coincidentally only included senior management. As days turned into weeks, Amelia's intern experience became a masterclass in workplace abuse. She was tasked with menial jobs that had nothing to do with marketing, cleaning conference rooms, organizing personal files for managers, and even picking up dry cleaning for executives. When she tried to contribute actual ideas during brainstorming sessions, she was quickly shut down with condescending remarks about staying in her lane and learning to listen before speaking. The breaking point came during her third week when she witnessed something that made her blood boil. A talented young analyst named Kevin Martinez had developed an innovative social media strategy that could potentially increase customer engagement by 30%. Kevin was excited to present his idea during the weekly team meeting, but Miles Webb had other plans. Just hours before the meeting, Miles called Kevin into his office and informed him that his idea wasn't quite ready for presentation. Instead, Miles would present a modified version of the concept himself. Kevin's face fell as he realized his work was being stolen, but he couldn't do anything about it. As an entry-level employee, challenging a director would be career suicide. During the meeting, Amelia watched as Miles presented Kevin's brilliant strategy as his own creation, receiving praise and recognition that rightfully belonged to the young analyst. The applause that filled the room felt like daggers in her chest, but she knew she had to maintain her cover. This was exactly the kind of behavior her father needed to know about, but she needed more evidence before she could act. If you're enjoying this incredible story of courage and corporate justice, please subscribe to Touching Boss Stories channel now because you won't believe what Amelia discovers next. The corruption runs deeper than anyone imagined, and the managers are about to make the biggest mistake of their careers. Tell me in the comments, have you ever witnessed workplace corruption or abuse of power? How would you handle being in Amelia's position? What Amelia uncovered over the following weeks would make any SOS worst nightmares seem like pleasant dreams. The corruption wasn't just widespread, it was systematic, calculated, and devastating to both the company's bottom line and employee morale. Her investigation began with simple observation, but soon evolved into something far more sophisticated. Using her Harvard-trained analytical skills, Amelia started documenting everything. She created encrypted files on her personal laptop, recorded conversations using a discrete voice recorder, and even took photographs of documents that managers carelessly left lying around. The first major discovery came when she was asked to clean out an old filing cabinet in Miles Webb's office. Hidden behind outdated marketing materials, she found a folder containing correspondence with a competitor company. The emails revealed that Miles was feeding confidential client information to Johnson Industries' biggest rival in exchange for substantial cash payments. Client lists, pricing strategies, upcoming product launches, everything was being sold to the highest bidder. But Miles wasn't working alone. The conspiracy involved multiple department heads who had created an elaborate network of corruption that threatened the very foundation of her father's empire. Sarah Chen in HR was systematically driving out honest employees who might expose their schemes, creating hostile work environments for anyone who asked too many questions or showed too much integrity. Robert Kane in finance was perhaps the most dangerous of all. He had developed a sophisticated embezzlement scheme that involved creating fake vendor accounts and approving fraudulent invoices. Money that should have gone toward employee benefits, research and development, and facility improvements was being diverted into personal accounts. The amounts were staggering. Over $2 million had been stolen in just the past 18 months. The sexual harassment that Amelia had witnessed was just the tip of the iceberg. During late nights when she volunteered to help with special projects, anything to gain more access, she discovered that several managers were using their positions to coerce female employees into inappropriate relationships. The HR department, which should have been protecting these women, was instead covering up incidents to avoid legal liability. One evening, while organizing files for a supposed marketing campaign review, Amelia overheard a phone conversation that made her stomach turn. Miles was speaking with someone about sabotaging an upcoming product launch that could have generated millions in revenue for the company. They were planning to leak critical technical specifications to competitors just days before the launch, ensuring that Johnson Industries would lose their competitive advantage. The level of betrayal was breathtaking. These weren't just disgruntled employees making poor decisions, they were orchestrating the systematic destruction of everything her father had built. They were parasites feeding off the company's success while simultaneously poisoning it from within. But perhaps the most heartbreaking discovery was how their corruption affected regular employees. Talented individuals like Kevin Martinez weren't isolated cases. Throughout her investigation, Emilia met dozens of hardworking, innovative employees whose ideas were being stolen, whose contributions went unrecognized, and whose career advancement was blocked by the very people who should have been mentoring them. There was Jennifer Walsh, a brilliant software engineer whose revolutionary app design was shelved because it might have threatened existing vendor relationships that generated kickbacks for managers. There was David Kim, an accountant who had identified significant cost-saving opportunities but was told to stop rocking the boat when his suggestions might have exposed financial irregularities. Most devastating of all was meeting Lisa Rodriguez, a single mother who had been working at the company for 5 years without a single promotion despite consistently exceeding her performance targets. When Lisa finally worked up the courage to apply for a management position, Sarah Chen fabricated performance issues in her file and hired the unqualified nephew of a board member instead. These weren't just statistics or case studies. They were real people whose lives and careers were being destroyed by unchecked greed and abuse of power. Emilia realized that her father's company wasn't just losing money, it was hemorrhaging its most valuable asset, talented, dedicated employees who believed in the mission Daniel Johnson had originally created. The investigation took a personal turn when managers began targeting her specifically. Perhaps they sensed something different about her, or maybe they were just cruel by nature, but the harassment escalated significantly. Miles Webb began assigning her increasingly degrading tasks, like cleaning his personal car during her lunch breaks and organizing his home office on weekends, unpaid work that had nothing to do with her internship. Robert Kane made inappropriate comments about her appearance and suggested that certain opportunities might be available if she was willing to be more flexible about company policies. When she politely declined his advances, he made sure her workload tripled and her access to resources became severely limited. Sarah Chen was perhaps the most vindictive, creating a hostile environment that seemed designed to break Emilia's spirit. She would publicly criticize her work in front of other employees, question her intelligence and qualifications, and make snide comments about how some people weren't cut out for corporate environments. The psychological pressure was immense, but Emilia drew strength from remembering why she was there. Every insult, every degrading task, every moment of humiliation was building a case that would eventually bring justice to her father's company. She was fighting not just for herself, but for every honest employee who had suffered under these corrupt managers. The final piece of evidence came during a late-night emergency project that required her to stay in the office until nearly midnight. While making copies of marketing materials, she accidentally accessed the wrong network drive and discovered a folder labeled Executive Compensation Review. What she found inside was explosive. The corrupt managers had been systematically inflating their performance metrics, falsifying quarterly reports, and manipulating budget figures to justify massive bonuses and salary increases. They were literally stealing money from the company while simultaneously sabotaging its success. The irony was staggering. They were being rewarded handsomely for destroying the very organization that employed them. Armed with months of evidence, recorded conversations, financial documents, and witness testimonies, Emilia finally had everything she needed to expose the conspiracy. But she knew that revealing her identity too early could allow the corrupt managers to destroy evidence or manipulate the narrative. She needed to choose her moment carefully, a time when maximum impact could be achieved and justice could be served decisively. The opportunity would come sooner than she expected, during what should have been a routine company meeting. But first, she had to endure one final humiliation that would become the catalyst for everything that followed. This story is about to reach its explosive climax, so make sure you're subscribed to this channel because what happens next will blow your mind. Justice is coming, and it's going to be swift and devastating. If you had evidence of this level of corruption in your workplace, would you have the courage to expose it knowing it could put your career at risk? Let me know in the comments. The day that would change everything started like any other, but beneath the surface, tensions were building toward an explosive confrontation that would reshape Johnson Industries forever. Amelia had spent weeks carefully planning her revelation, but fate had other plans. Sometimes justice arrives not on schedule, but exactly when it's needed most. The quarterly board meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in the company's largest conference room. It was meant to be a routine review of departmental performance, budget allocations, and strategic planning for the upcoming fiscal quarter. Board members, department heads, senior managers, and select staff members would attend, including a handful of interns who were supposed to observe and learn from the proceedings. Amelia arrived early, as she always did, dressed in her modest intern uniform of a simple blouse and slacks. She carried a notebook and pen, playing the role of eager young professional trying to absorb wisdom from her corporate superiors. But hidden in her purse was something far more valuable than any notebook, an encrypted flash drive containing months of evidence that would expose the systematic corruption plaguing her father's company. The conference room gradually filled with the usual suspects. Miles Webb strutted in wearing an expensive suit that probably cost more than most employees' monthly salaries, his arrogance palpable as he glad-handed other managers. Sarah Chen entered with her characteristic fake smile, immediately beginning to spread gossip and undermine colleagues with surgical precision. Robert Kane arrived clutching his leather portfolio, no doubt filled with more falsified financial reports designed to cover his embezzlement tracks. What none of them knew was that this meeting would be different from every other quarterly review in the company's history. Unbeknownst to the corrupt managers, Daniel Johnson himself had been growing increasingly suspicious about the company's declining performance despite what appeared to be strong departmental reports. He had been quietly conducting his own investigation and had decided to make a surprise appearance at this meeting, an appearance that would coincide perfectly with his daughter's long-planned revelation. The meeting began with Miles Webb taking center stage, as he often did. His presentation was polished, confident, and completely fabricated. He spoke about innovative marketing campaigns that existed only on paper, client relationships that had actually been damaged by his information selling scheme, and team performance metrics that bore no resemblance to reality. The board members nodded approvingly, unaware that every word coming out of his mouth was a carefully crafted deception. Sarah Chen followed with her HR report, painting a picture of a harmonious workplace where employee satisfaction was at an all-time high and turnover was minimal. She conveniently omitted the dozens of harassment complaints that had been buried, the talented employees who had been driven out for asking inconvenient questions, and the toxic culture that was destroying morale throughout the organization. Robert Kane's financial presentation was perhaps the most audacious of all. He had the nerve to congratulate himself on cost-saving measures and efficient resource allocation while standing in front of charts that masked millions of dollars in embezzled funds. His confidence was breathtaking. He genuinely believed that his sophisticated theft would never be discovered. Throughout these presentations, Amelia sat quietly in the back row with the other interns, documenting everything and waiting for her moment. She watched board members accept lies as truth, witnessed colleagues nod in agreement with obvious fabrications, and felt her anger building with each passing minute. These people weren't just stealing money, they were stealing the legacy her father had spent decades building. Then came the moment that would trigger everything. As the formal presentations concluded, Miles Webb decided to demonstrate his authority in the most degrading way possible. He turned toward the intern section with a condescending smile and announced, "Before we move to the executive discussion portion of our meeting, I think our interns should make themselves useful. Why don't you fetch coffee for the real professionals?" The room chuckled appreciatively at his casual cruelty. Several board members nodded approvingly, as if treating young people like servants was not only acceptable but admirable. Other managers smirked, enjoying the power dynamic that reduced bright, educated individuals to coffee-fetching automatons. But Miles wasn't finished. He pointed directly at Amelia and continued his humiliation campaign. "You there, quiet girl in the back. You've been awfully silent throughout this meeting. Cat got your tongue, or are you just realizing that interns like you don't belong in big business?" The room fell silent as all eyes turned toward Amelia. Miles's voice dripped with contempt as he delivered his final insult. "You're disposable, sweetheart. Replaceable. There are 1,000 other naive college graduates who would kill for your position, and not one of them would be any more valuable than you are right now. 0. The cruelty was breathtaking. In front of dozens of witnesses, Miles had reduced a brilliant young woman to nothing more than an inconvenient presence to be mocked and dismissed. His words weren't just attacking Amelia personally, they represented the toxic attitude that had poisoned the entire company culture. Other interns looked mortified, some staring at their hands to avoid eye contact, others shooting sympathetic glances toward Amelia. The board members seemed uncomfortable but unwilling to intervene, as if challenging Miles might disrupt some unspoken hierarchy that kept them all comfortable in their positions of power. Sarah Chin actually smiled during the humiliation, clearly enjoying seeing another young woman being put in her place. Robert Kane nodded approvingly, as if Miles's cruelty was not only acceptable but commendable. The message was clear: this was how power worked at Johnson Industries, and anyone who didn't like it could find the door. But as Miles Webb basked in the laughter and approval of his colleagues, he had no idea that he had just made the biggest mistake of his career. He had chosen to publicly humiliate the one person in that room who had the power to destroy everything he had built through years of corruption and abuse. Amelia didn't flinch. She didn't cry, didn't show anger, didn't give Miles the satisfaction of seeing her break under his verbal assault. Instead, she simply smiled, a calm, knowing smile that should have terrified anyone paying close attention. She had been waiting months for the perfect moment to reveal her identity and expose the corruption, and Miles had just handed it to her on a silver platter. The stage was set. The audience was assembled. The evidence was compiled. And somewhere in the building, her father was making his way toward a conference room where justice was about to be served in the most dramatic fashion possible. You're not going to want to miss what happens next, so hit that subscribe button right now because the most satisfying moment in corporate justice history is about to unfold. The corrupt managers have no idea what's coming for them. Have you ever been publicly humiliated by someone in power? How did it make you feel, and what would you have done if you had Amelia's ability to fight back? Drop your thoughts in the comments. What happened next became the stuff of corporate legend. A moment so perfectly orchestrated by fate and justice that it seemed almost too incredible to be true. But sometimes reality delivers satisfaction more complete than any fiction could provide. As Miles Webb's cruel laughter echoed through the conference room and his colleagues basked in their collective display of power, the double doors at the far end of the room suddenly opened. The conversation died instantly. Every head turned toward the entrance, where a figure that commanded absolute respect was striding purposefully into their midst. Daniel Johnson had arrived. The billionaire CEO moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had built an empire from nothing and commanded the loyalty of 50,000 employees worldwide. His presence immediately transformed the atmosphere in the room. Board members straightened in their chairs. Managers who had been laughing moments before now looked nervous and uncertain. Even Miles Webb's arrogant smile faltered as he realized that his surprise humiliation show had just gained the most important audience member possible. But Daniel wasn't alone. Behind him walked two members of the company's elite security team, their professional demeanor suggesting that this wasn't a casual visit. Something significant was about to happen, and everyone in the room could feel the electricity in the air. Daniel's eyes swept across the conference room, taking in the scene before him. He noticed the uncomfortable expressions on the interns' faces, the guilty shuffling of managers who had been caught in the middle of their toxic behavior, and the absolute silence that had replaced the earlier mockery and laughter. His gaze finally settled on his daughter, still sitting quietly in the back row, her calm composure in stark contrast to the chaos her presence was about to unleash. "I apologize for interrupting your meeting," Daniel said, his voice carrying the authority that had built a billion-dollar empire. "But I've been conducting some investigations into our company's recent performance issues, and I believe there are some matters that need immediate attention." Miles Webb attempted to regain control of the situation, his voice slightly shaky as he responded, "Of course, Mr. Johnson. We were just concluding our quarterly reviews. Everything is running smoothly as always." Daniel's expression didn't change, but those who knew him well could detect the steel beneath his calm exterior. "Running smoothly," he repeated thoughtfully. "That's interesting because the evidence I've gathered suggests quite the opposite." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Managers exchanged nervous glances, suddenly wondering if their carefully constructed web of lies was about to unravel. Sarah Chen's fake smile became more forced. Robert Kane's knuckles went white as he gripped his portfolio. Miles Webb's confident posture began to waver. That's when Amelia rose from her seat. The movement was smooth, deliberate, and commanded attention from everyone in the room. She walked slowly toward the front of the conference room, her modest intern attire suddenly seeming less like a disguise and more like battle armor. Every step she took increased the tension in the room exponentially. When she reached the front of the room, she turned to face the assembled managers, board members, and fellow interns. Her voice, when she spoke, was clear, confident, and completely devoid of the submissiveness that had characterized her intern persona. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "I think it's time for some proper introductions. My name is not just Amelia, as you've known me for the past 3 months. My full name is Amelia Johnson, daughter of Daniel Johnson, CEO of Johnson Industries. And as of today, I hold executive authority over this company's operations." The silence that followed was deafening. You could have heard a pin drop in that conference room. Jaws literally dropped open. Some managers went pale. Others began to sweat visibly. Miles Webb looked like he had been struck by lightning, his face cycling through disbelief, horror, and the gradual realization that his career was over. But Amelia wasn't finished. From her purse, she withdrew a thick manila folder and placed it on the conference table with a decisive thud. The sound echoed through the room like a judge's gavel delivering a final verdict. "For the past 3 months," she continued, "I have been documenting systematic corruption, embezzlement, sexual harassment, and corporate sabotage within this organization. I have recorded conversations, photographed documents, collected witness testimony, and compiled financial evidence that reveals a conspiracy to defraud this company of millions of dollars." She opened the folder, revealing page after page of evidence, bank statements showing fraudulent transactions, printed emails revealing the sale of corporate secrets, photographs of confidential documents, and transcripts of recorded conversations. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable, and devastating. "Mr. Webb," she said, turning toward the marketing director who had humiliated her just minutes earlier, "you are hereby terminated for corporate espionage, embezzlement, and breach of fiduciary duty. Security will escort you from the building immediately, and our legal department will be filing criminal charges against you within 24 hours. Miles Webb's face went from pale to gray. He tried to speak, but no words came out. The man who had been so confident in his power, so cruel in his treatment of others, was suddenly reduced to a stammering, frightened individual who realized that his world was collapsing around him. "Ms. Chen," Amelia continued, turning toward the HR director, "you are terminated for systematic harassment, discrimination, and conspiracy to defraud. Your deliberate cover-up of sexual harassment complaints and your campaign to drive out honest employees ends today." Sarah Chen's fake smile had completely disappeared, replaced by a look of pure panic. She had spent years perfecting the art of corporate backstabbing, but she had never imagined that her victims might have the power to fight back so decisively. "Mr. Kane," Amelia said, addressing the finance director, "you are terminated for embezzlement, fraud, and theft of corporate assets. The $2 million you have stolen will be recovered, and you will be held personally accountable for every penny." Robert Kane's leather portfolio slipped from his trembling hands, its contents scattering across the floor like the remnants of his destroyed career. The sophisticated embezzlement scheme he had thought was undetectable had been completely exposed by a 20-year-old woman he had dismissed as worthless. One by one, Amelia called out every corrupt manager in the room. Each termination was swift, decisive, and backed by irrefutable evidence. Security personnel moved efficiently to escort the fired executives from the building, their careers and reputations destroyed in a matter of minutes. As the corrupt managers were removed from the conference room, something remarkable happened. The remaining employees, the honest, hard-working individuals who had suffered under the toxic leadership, began to applaud. The applause started slowly, with just a few people clapping, but it quickly grew into a thunderous ovation that filled the entire room. Amelia raised her hand for silence, and the room immediately quieted. She wasn't finished yet. Effective immediately, she announced, I am promoting several individuals who have demonstrated exceptional integrity and capability. Kevin Martinez, your social media strategy was brilliant, and you are hereby appointed as acting marketing director. Jennifer Walsh, your app design will be fast-tracked for development, and you will lead our new innovation division. David Kim, your cost-saving analysis was exactly what this company needed, and you are now our deputy finance director. The transformations were swift and decisive. Talented employees who had been overlooked, dismissed, and marginalized were suddenly being given the recognition and authority they had always deserved. The corrupt hierarchy that had stifled innovation and promoted mediocrity was being replaced by a meritocracy that valued talent, integrity, and genuine contribution. Lisa Rodriguez, the single mother who had been denied promotions for 5 years, was appointed as the new HR director with a mandate to create a workplace culture based on respect, fairness, and genuine opportunity for advancement. As the meeting concluded, Amelia stood at the head of the boardroom table, not just as the CEO's daughter, but as a leader who had proven she had the intelligence, courage, and moral authority to protect her father's empire. The viral twist wasn't just that she had fired corrupt managers, it was that she had replaced them with young, diverse, hardworking employees who had been systematically overlooked by the old regime. Her final words echoed through the conference room and would soon echo throughout the business world. This company doesn't run on fear and greed anymore. It runs on integrity. My father built it with his vision and determination, and I will protect it with mine. We're not just changing personnel today, we're changing the culture. We're proving that businesses can be successful while treating people with dignity and respect. The story of Amelia Johnson's undercover investigation became a viral sensation, inspiring countless discussions about corporate accountability, workplace justice, and the power of courage in the face of corruption. But more importantly, it became a blueprint for how one person, with the right combination of intelligence, determination, and moral courage, could transform an entire organization and restore integrity to a system that had lost its way. Johnson Industries didn't just recover from its corruption crisis, it thrived. Employee satisfaction soared, productivity increased, and the company's reputation was stronger than ever. The young, diverse leadership that Amelia had promoted brought fresh ideas, innovative approaches, and a commitment to excellence that drove the company to new heights of success. And Amelia? She had proven that she wasn't just the CEO's daughter, she was a formidable business leader in her own right, someone who understood that true power comes not from position or privilege, but from the courage to do what's right, even when it's difficult. This incredible story of justice and transformation shows us that corruption can be defeated when good people have the courage to fight back. If this story inspired you, make sure you're subscribed to Touching Boss Stories channel now for more amazing tales of justice and triumph. What's the most important lesson you learned from Amelia's story, and how would you apply it in your own life or career? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one of them.